Our lesson today is going to be a little bit long, ladies and gentlemen, but I need you to hang in here with me so that we have the basics about fake news. The past few weeks, we spent a lot of time talking about different persuasive techniques that people will use to try to convince you. And as we are in the middle of, or really nearing the end of another presidential election year, we need to really pay attention to what's going on in the news. Not just because of the election, but because fake news is and has always been a thing and is going to continue to be. Okay? So, the slideshow today that you're going to be working with is called Media Literacy Spotting Fake News. So, let's take a look. First of all, what is fake news? Like, why do we talk about this all the time lately? We see fake news, fake news, fake news all the time. So if you click on this link here in your slideshow, you'll see what there's a screenshot of here. And I've asked for all of these websites to be whitelisted, so I am hoping that that happens. This is the Google page, the image page that comes up when I type in, see, fake news Donald Trump tweet. We hear from the leader of our own nation all the time the words fake news, and we have been hearing that for several years now. So when I search that, I find that he tweets fake news, fake news, fake news all the time, right? Fake news, the enemy of the people. Fake news is working overtime. Just reported that despite tremendous success we're having with the economy and all things else, 91% of the network news about me is negative, fake. So his connection is if that news about me is negative, then that news is fake. Just all over the place. When you click this link, you can take a look and see. I don't know whether or not your computers filter out Twitter in general, but there you go. So that is one reason why we keep seeing this come up over and over and over again. We also see stuff like this. So this woman is on her computer saying, how do you know if a news story is true? And her buddy is over here on his phone and he says, if I agree with it. So what we have, and we'll talk about this later, is called cognitive bias, okay? It's this idea that people will believe things because they want to believe it, in spite of any factual information that they're given that tells them otherwise, okay? So, and this. 28% of Americans consider reports that accurately cast a politician in a negative light to be fake news. So, as I just kind of alluded to before, a lot of people will think, well, if it says something bad about a candidate, then it must be fake, because they must just be name-calling. Okay, we talked about name-calling and propaganda. And you do see a ton of name-calling during elections. Maybe not the most mature way to go about a situation, but just because you're name calling doesn't necessarily mean you're lying, okay? So we need to take a look at that. Although a lot of name calling is lying, we still need to think about that critically. So I want you to look at this term here. This came up about 4 years ago, and I keep using it every year because I have not found anything better than this instance in our news history. The term alternative facts. So if we look at the word alternative, what does that mean? Does it mean A, available as another possibility, B, out of place, C, coming from out of nowhere, or D, having to do with truthfulness? What does alternative mean? If you guessed A, you are correct. Okay, alternative means available as another possibility. Okay, I don't like the lasagna that my mother is serving for dinner, so she offers me an alternative. I can have a bowl of cornflakes instead. or I cannot accomplish this particular assignment because it is just way beyond what I am able to read and understand. So my teacher might offer me an alternative assignment that teaches me the same things, but is more comfortable for me to read and understand. Okay, that's an alternative. Doesn't mean, okay, I'll just go with that. So a fact, the word fact here. What is a fact? Is it A, something that can only be known through faith? B, a person's perception of what is real? C, something that is unarguably the case? Or D, anything that is true as long as the majority of people accept it to be true? What is a fact? If you guessed C, you got the best answer here, okay? It's something that is unarguably the case. You cannot argue against it. It is like as simple as the desk that this computer is sitting on exists. That is a fact. I know, I could touch it, I could feel it, okay? I could see it. Water is made up of 2 parts hydrogen and 1 part oxygen. That is a fact. No imagining or thinking or, saying anything otherwise is going to make that anything other than a fact. That is what water is made of. Okay? So just because you don't believe it doesn't mean it's not a fact. All right? So, alternative facts. So as you do this assignment, I want you to think about this, okay? What is an alternative fact then? Because this is an actual phrase that you're about to see has actually been used. And if we were doing this together as a class, I would have you guys all share your answers first before we moved on. Since I don't have that liberty right now, I just want you to think for a minute before you do the rest of the assignment. What do you think that is? Okay. I also would recommend that you might just want to have this tutorial open in one window on your computer and have the assignment itself open on the other side of your computer in another window so that you can do this as we go. And you can pause your video when you need to, and then, back up if you need to, and then continue when you need to. Just pace yourself, all right? So once you have thought about and answered that question, this particular incident comes from January 2017, and I try to update my assignments every year for media literacy because obviously media is always changing. But like I said, I have yet to come up with a better example than the one that I'm about to show you. So POTUS means President of the United States. So you're going to see that in the news a lot too. POTUS means President of the United States. So this is the inauguration crowd from 2017, and that is when President Donald Trump was inaugurated. Okay, so inauguration is the big ceremony that they have on the first day of a president's presidency, where he comes in and they swear him in and he says, I promise I will uphold the Constitution and do all the presidential things. And then when that is done, he is officially the President of the United States for the next 4 years. So this was the crowd on the Mall in Washington on the day of Trump's election. This is an actual photograph, okay? And the one over here on the right side is an actual photograph of the mall in 2009 when President Obama was inaugurated. So if you just look at the pictures here, what we see is that there is definitely a difference in the crowd. How many people were there, how far back it goes, and so on and so forth, okay? Why am I making a big deal of this? Well, I didn't personally make a big deal of this. I'm showing you this because in the media, a big deal was made of this. So let's see what happened. This video link hopefully will work for you when you click on it because I have asked it to be whitelisted, okay? This is a news clip, okay, from Sean Spicer. This guy was the original press secretary for Donald Trump. And a president gets a press secretary to always go up in front of the media and kind of act as a go-between between the president and the news media. So right after the election, okay, the day after the inauguration, Trump sent Sean Spicer, his press secretary, out to give this announcement.
Good evening. Thank you guys for coming. I know our first official press briefing is going to be on Monday, but I wanted to give you a few updates on the president's activities. But before I get to the news of the day, I think I'd like to discuss a little bit of the coverage of the past 24 hours. Yesterday, at a time when our nation and the world was watching the peaceful transition of power, and as the president said, the transition and the balance of power from Washington to the citizens of the United States, some members of the media were engaged in deliberately false reporting. For all the talk about the proper use of Twitter, two instances yesterday stand out. One was a particularly egregious example in which a reporter falsely tweeted out that the bust of Martin Luther King Jr. had been removed from the Oval Office. After it was pointed out that this was just plain wrong, the reporter casually reported and tweeted out and tried to claim that a Secret Service agent must have just been standing in front of it. This was irresponsible and reckless. Secondly,
Okay, so let's just pause here and consider the motivation. Okay, what happened here this is factual. Okay, if you fact check it, you'll see this was tweeted out. It was an error. Okay, the bust had not been removed. But what Sean Spicer is trying to do here is discredit the news media and say, basically, they lie. Okay, so somebody jumped the gun. Somebody tweeted something before they should have tweeted it and before they knew otherwise. And that was an error. Okay, but the whole point of bringing this up is to try to show and prove that the news media lies. That's what Spicer and Trump want you to believe. Okay, so let's keep watching now and see what happens.
Photographs of the inaugural proceedings were intentionally framed in a way, in one particular tweet, to minimize the enormous support that had gathered on the National Mall. This was the first time in our nation's history that floor coverings have been used to protect the grass in the mall. That had the effect of highlighting any areas where people were not standing, while in years past, the grass eliminated this visual. This was also...
So notice also that the photograph, from the angle that they're showing you right now, they're showing it from the opposite angle as the previous photo. So what you can see is that all the crowd is forward in the foreground, right? Whereas from the other one, from the back view, you could see the crowd was all toward the front and there was a lot of emptiness in the back, okay? So they're also using perspective to try to manipulate what you're thinking by only showing you part of the crowd instead of the whole crowd.
Also the first time that fencing and magnetometers went as far back on the wall, preventing hundreds of thousands of people from being able to access the mall as quickly as they had in inaugurations past. Inaccurate numbers involving crowd size were also tweeted. No one had numbers because the National Park Service, which controls the National Mall, does not put any out. By the way, this applies to any attempts to try to count the number of protesters today in the same fashion. We do know a few things, so let's go through the facts. We know that from the platform where the president was sworn in to 4th Street holds about 250,000 people. From 4th Street to the media tent is about another 220,000. And from the media tent to the Washington Monument, another 250,000 people. All of this space was full when the president took the oath of office. We know that 420,000 people used the D.C. Metro public transit yesterday, which actually compares to 317,000 that used it for President Obama's last inaugural. This was the largest audience to ever witness an inauguration, period, both in person and around the globe. Even the
Okay, so the claim they're making here is that President Donald Trump had the largest crowd show up to see him sworn in of any other president ever, anywhere in the history of the universe. Okay, that is their claim. Why this is such an important claim to him, I'll let you guys think about that and decide. Why do you think it's so important to President Trump that we all believe that he had the most giant outcome for his inauguration ever? And why is it so important to him that we believe that it was way bigger than Obama's? okay? So they're throwing out these, these figures to try to say, oh, well, this many people use public transit. So that's 100,000 some more than 4 years ago when Obama was inaugurated. So that obviously means that all those people were going to the inauguration. I mean, we don't know that all those people were going to the inauguration. There were also an awful lot of protesters that weekend in Washington, D.C. And I know because I was in Washington, D.C. that weekend. So I personally can tell you that a lot of the people using the public transit were not using it so that they could go to the inauguration. They were using it for other reasons. Okay, so think about, why is it so important to him that we believe he had the biggest inauguration crowd ever? We're not going to watch this whole video, but let's just watch a few more minutes.
The New York Times printed a photograph showing a misrepresentation of the crowd in their original tweet in their paper, which showed the full extent of the support, depth, and crowd and intensity that existed. These attempts to lessen the enthusiasm of the inauguration are shameful and wrong. The president was also at the Central, as you know, the president was at the Central Intelligence Agency today and greeted by a raucous overflow crowd of some 400 plus CIA employees. There were over 1,000 requests to attend, prompting the president to note that he'll have to come back to greet the rest. The employees were ecstatic that he's the new commander-in-chief, and he delivered them a powerful and important message. He told them he has their back, and they were grateful for that.
All right, so you can, if you want, you can watch the rest of that press briefing, okay? But the bottom line is that it began trying to discredit the media and say that the news media lies, and it continues then, okay, to try to convince us that the news media lies. So shortly after this press conference, there was a lot of stuff on social media and a lot of stuff in the news about this press conference. Like, how come this is the first ever thing, the first news press conference that they ever come out with? And so there was this interview here done with Kellyanne Conway, who is one of, I don't think she is anymore. She was one of Donald Trump's prominent media people, okay? So they did an interview with her, and this is where the alternative facts come in. So let's see what she has to say.
Then explain you did not answer the question. Why did the president send out his press secretary, who's not just the spokesperson for Donald Trump, he also serves as the spokesperson for all of America at times. He speaks for all of the country at times. Why put him out there for the very first time in front of that podium to utter a provable falsehood? It's a small thing, but the first time he confronts the public, it's a falsehood?
Chuck, I mean, if we're going to keep referring to our press secretary in those types of terms, I think that we're going to have to rethink our relationship here. I want to have a great open relationship with our press, but look what happened the day before, talking about falsehoods. We allowed the press spray to come into the Oval Office and witness President Trump signing executive orders. And of course, the Senate had just confirmed General Mattis and General Kelly to their two posts, and we allow the press in, and what happens almost immediately? A falsehood is told about removing the bust of Martin Luther King Jr. from the Oval Office.
Okay, so she revisits this. Again, keeps coming up. News guy makes a mistake, tweets something he shouldn't before he knows that it's wrong, and they're gonna keep harping on this. The news lies, the news lies, the news lies. Okay, that's what they want you to believe.
That's just flat out false. And
it was corrected immediately.
Chuck, why was it said? Chuck, why was it said in the first place? Because everybody is so presumptively negative. No, that it's okay. No, excuse me. Oh, no. That reporter was writing on behalf of the press pool. That falsehood got spread 3,000 times before it was corrected.
Excuse
me.
It does not excuse, and you did not answer the question.
I did answer your question.
No, you did not. You did not answer the question of why the president asked the White House press secretary to come out in front of the podium for the first time and utter a falsehood. Why did he do that? It undermines the credibility of the entire White House press office on day one.
Don't be so overly dramatic about it, Chuck. You're saying it's a falsehood, and they're giving Sean Spicer, our press secretary, gave alternative facts to that. But the point
Wait a minute.
remains
Alternative
that there's
facts? Alternative facts for the 5 facts he uttered. The
Hey,
one
Chuck,
thing he
why-
got
hey,
right
Chuck.
was Zeke Miller. 4 of the 5 facts he uttered were just not true. Look, alternative facts are not facts. They're falsehoods.
Chuck, do you think it's a fact or not that millions of people have lost their plans, their health insurance, and their doctors under President Obama? Do you think it's a fact that everything we heard from these women yesterday happened on the watch of Barack Obama? He was president for 8 years. Donald Trump's been here for about 8 hours. Do you think it's a fact that millions of women, 16.1 million women, as I stand here before you today, are in poverty along with their kids? Do you think it's a fact that millions don't have health care? Do you think it's a fact that we spent billions of dollars on education in the last 8 years, only to have millions of kids still stuck in schools that fail them every single day? These are the facts that I want the press corps to cover, and this is why I'm here at the White
But I
House
understand
to
this.
change
What I don't
awful
understand
numbers
is
like that.
that is not what yesterday was about. So you
Yes,
have not
it is.
answered the question. You did not answer the
It's what
question.
this presidency is going to be about.
You sent the press secretary out there to utter a falsehood on the smallest, pettiest thing.
I don't think
And
anybody
I
can
don't
prove the Look, I
understand
actually
why
don't
you
think
did
that
it.
maybe.
Okay, so what we see here is that Kellyanne goes on and on about a million things that she thinks Obama just completely messed up and still has not answered the question, which was, how come when it was clear that this was not the biggest inauguration crowd ever, how come when you can't prove that, that is a complete lie, how come you send out your press secretary to make that claim? Why would that be the first thing that this president wants put on the table? Okay, so she still has not answered the question. She has suggested that there's a such thing as alternative facts, okay? That if my facts don't match your facts, that maybe there's just 2 sets of facts, okay? Maybe water really is both a liquid and you could say water is both a liquid and a gas, but in different formats. So maybe that's a bad example, okay? But I can't say that, this is both a phone and a sandwich, okay? Because it's either a phone or a sandwich. There is no alternative to what this is. It is a phone, all right? So think about that, and let's finish watching her interview.
Maybe this is me as a pollster, Chuck, and you know data well. I don't think you can prove those numbers one way or the other. There's no way to really quantify crowds. We all know that. You can laugh at me all you want, but I'm very glad.
I'm
Look,
just
Chuck,
befuddled.
well, but you are, and I think it's actually symbolic of the way we're treated by the press. The way that you just laughed at me is actually symbolic of the way, very representative of the way we're treated by the press. I'll just ignore it. I'm bigger than that. I'm a kind and gracious person.
Hey, NBC News fans, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel.
Okay, so in the end, what does she say? Basically, oh, well, you guys, the news, the media, you guys are just mean to us. So I'm just going to let that roll off my back because I know that the real reason that you are trying to point all of this out is because you're just mean and you just don't like me. Okay? So that is her final analysis during this interview. All right, so yeah. So alternative facts. I'm going to have you guys use several fact-finding websites over the course of this semester, and one I want you to get used to is PolitiFact, okay? So if we go to the next slide, it asks us, what does PolitiFact have to say about this issue? So we open this up, and I want to point out, you guys, okay, that right now, people are going to try to make you think that you can't believe anybody or any media. That is baloney, okay? The whole purpose of this class is to teach you how to determine what you can and cannot believe when you look at media. There are sources you can trust more than others. So get it out of your head right now that you can't trust anything, because that's baloney. And I don't want to hear it, okay? So PolitiFact, it is a nonpartisan institution that fact checks politics and political issues in the news. So when they fact checked this particular issue on January 21, 2017, okay, they came to the conclusion, they have a huge, they have this huge one called Pants on Fire, meaning this is one of the biggest lies we've ever seen, okay? So when you look at that, it'll ask you the original question. Donald Trump had the biggest inaugural crowd ever. Metrics don't show it. And they go through all of the facts and logical reasons why Sean Spicer's claim was a pants on fire lie. Okay? This is not supported by Democrats. It is not supported by Republicans. It is not created by some phantom crazy person out to try to manipulate you. PolitiFact is a reputable organization that you can trust. They fact check. They show their sources. Okay? So you can trust 99.9% that if they say it's a lie, it is a lie. All right? So when you use this site, I want you to keep that in mind, okay? They have updates every single day. You know, they have one just from this past week, you know, saying something that Joe Biden said was only half true. All right? So that is what we can find when we really fact check. I want you to now complete a couple of questions, okay? Not all news is good news. And by that, I don't mean not all news is like happy good news, like, oh, we love hearing that news. I mean, it's not all quality news. Some of it is crap. A lot of it is crap. And the more media we get and the bigger the internet grows, the more crap we're gonna look at. So we need to know how to filter the crap. So I want you to think about and answer the following questions. What is news? And why is it so important for people to have an understanding of that definition? Okay, so down here, I want you to answer, what is news? What does that mean? And why is it so important that we understand what news is? 2, should schools teach students how to find news and distinguish reliable news from fake news? Answer below. What do you think? Should schools, like I'm doing right now, should we be doing this? Should we bother? Okay, why or why not? What are the most important things that students should know about the news? Okay? There's no right or wrong answer here. I just want your opinion. What do you think is most important to know? What does a teenager need to know? So these are going to be our objectives for this unit over the next, week or two. 1, I can distinguish real news from fake news. Okay, that's what I want you to primarily be able to do. 2, I can explain to others how to detect the differences between what is and is not factual on the internet and in the news. My hope is that you don't just learn to distinguish these things for yourself, but that you help spread the word. Okay? And that when you see some baloney posted on social media, that you will be that person to jump in and say, you know what? Check out this source. Okay? This fact-checking site says that this is not true. So stop spreading misinformation. And we're going to learn about misinformation versus disinformation as well, okay? And the third objective is I can create a plan to help other students understand what is and is not reliable information. So at the end of the day, I am going to have you have a final assessment where you are teaching somebody else, okay? Creating something for an audience to help them distinguish real from fake news and understand why that is so important. So the assignment I want you to work on over the next couple of days, and I am almost done, I promise, okay, is you're going to look at several images, okay? And for each image, there's this guy, there's this Biden meme that just came up in the last week or so. There's this oldie but goodie about Tupac Shakur, and there is one here from the last year about COVID-19. So I want you to take a look at those sources, and for each one of them, I want you to answer this question. When you look at this image, what claim is being made? What do they want us to believe? What's the claim? What does the creator of this image want us to believe? And I want you to write your response in the box, okay? After each one, I actually have a slide that will help you determine the factiness and fictioniness of each of them. So like after you have thought about this image, and please don't jump ahead. I really want to know what you're thinking before you look, okay? When you jump ahead, you should be able to click the link and it will give you information that I will not give you now about that particular image and how factual or not factual it is, okay? Really think too about the motivation here. Who's the target audience? Why do they want the audience to believe these things regardless of the amount of factual evidence behind it, okay? So I want to leave you with this thought here in this image. Here we have President Abraham Lincoln. And he says, don't believe everything you read on the internet just because there's a picture with a quote next to it. Abraham Lincoln. And think about that for a minute. If in the 1860s, Abraham Lincoln really would have said this, and why this is funny when you get the joke. Okay? Finish up by answering 2 final discussion questions. What happens when fake news spreads? Type your response here. And what actions can you take to verify news stories, photographs, and other sources of online information? Put your response here, and you're done. So because this is such an incredibly long instructional video, I'm giving you 2 days to do this. Hopefully, please, God, please, you have actually watched this video to get the lesson. And then you can finish up and answer all your questions today when you're done with this, or you can do it tomorrow. I don't care, okay? As long as you get it done. And I hope that you enjoy the rest of your day. Contact me if you have any questions.